The Agenda with Michael Knight on News Radio 560 KPQ and KPQ.com.
1:38 on a Friday afternoon, 76 degrees here in Wenatchee Town. My very special guest is Alan Fahnestock. He's a candidate for the 12th District legislative seat, and we welcome him to our studios. Alan, nice to have you here.
Nice to be here.
You're a rookie for politics, right? First time you ever run for anything?
First time I ran for board of our HOA up in the Metro, but I was sort of forced to. Whereas this was my choice.
But this was your choice.
Right.
Well, what made you make that decision? Because it's not something to do casually.
Well, I have never been a member of either of the major parties, or any other party for that matter, and I don't really like the way they've been operating for the past, 15, 20 years.
Right.
It seems to me that there's divisiveness for the sake of divisiveness, as opposed to simple disagreement and trying to work out.
Plenty to go around.
Yeah. And so I'm reaching an age where either I do it now or I don't do it at all, and I've been thinking about it for quite some time. So I actually sat and watched the roster on the Secretary of State's site, and when I saw that basically, Mike Steele has two opponents, both me and a woman named Valerie Surratt, whom I vaguely know. And she's a strong Democrat. He's a strong Republican. I'm a strong neither.
Do you want to call yourself anything? Are they saying you're an independent? What do they call you?
How
about the Bull Moose Party?
No party preference, where is what the Secretary of State says. What I would say is prefers no party.
Right. And do you find that people take you at that, or do they say he's just a Republican posing as an independent, or he's just a Democrat posing as a Republican?
I don't think that people are, I suspect that my affinity is more towards the Democrats in terms of policy and that kind of thing. But people who know me, and everybody in the Metro knows everybody, I think would say, yeah, he's pretty independent. Because I tend to look at facts and think pretty hard before I take a position on things.
Well, there's a number of positions. Of course, every position that we take nationally affects the Metro Valley in some way. But what are the conditions there right now ripe for? What are people concerned about? What are they talking about? What do they want from you?
Up in the Metro?
Uh-huh.
Well, some of them would just as soon I went away, I suspect. But
just go home or just leave the valley?
I think the major issue up there, and this is colored by my own feeling, is the fact that, okay, we've got relatively low unemployment, but on the other hand, most people have kind of lousy jobs, and they're working three of them. And I have rather broad experience as an adult, all the way from effectively homeless to being an executive in a major corporation. I think I cover the spectrum pretty well, and I understand people who have to work.
That's the alpha and the omega, isn't it?
Well, pretty much, yeah. On my 31st birthday, I was broke, homeless, and strung out on alcohol. And by my 40th birthday, I was an executive in a major corporation working in the former Soviet Union. And so... Sounds
like there's a number of stories that we could be telling about you here.
It's been a long, strange trip, as the Grateful Dead said. Yeah.
But you enjoyed it, except perhaps the first part of it?
People ask me if I regretted spending 10 years as an alcoholic or a practicing alcoholic. I generally just say drunk. I did a lot of really interesting stuff. I didn't kill anybody. I didn't maim anybody in a car accident. I hurt some people. Most of them accepted apologies afterwards, and it was mostly psychological hurt. And so I can't say that I have a lot of huge regrets, because I learned a great deal both from my mistakes and from some things that weren't mistakes.
Do you think as a candidate that type of life experience is serving you well? Do the people say, you know what, this guy is honest about his background, he's been through things and survived them where maybe I couldn't have? I might have been swept away by the forces of alcoholism.
I think that, a lot of people do get swept away, but everybody, given the opportunity, can, if you will, redeem themselves in one way, shape, or form. It's not necessarily easy, but I think people do appreciate the honesty. I mean, I've been honest about it with people in the Met Tower for a long time, just because I don't feel that. I feel sort of bad about it, but given that the repercussions, I mean, even my liver is still okay, so it wasn't a huge
good job
deal from that perspective. And I think they frequently appreciate the honesty, and also on occasion, other people who have dependency problems have approached me, and I've been in a position to help because I know where they're coming from.
Excellent.
And we do have a lot of dependency and substance abuse problems in our society throughout, and in particular in Eastern Washington.
It's the nature of our society, isn't it? Every society's got problems, and I'm not saying we're different from Chile or Afghanistan or Australia in that regard. I'm sure they have their substance abuse problems too, but we make an industry out of it.
Well, and we haven't found very many good solutions, and also with the incredible level of divisiveness and the fact that everybody is angry about something or depressed about something or broke or whatever, that I only know too well that can make people do fairly dumb things, including indulge in substances that are not going to do them any good.
And with your background and your experience in the Met Tower, what do you think that they want? What do you think the voters there really want? What are on their list?
Well, it's an interesting place because it's one of the few areas on this side of the mountains that is sort of purple. And up at my end of the valley, I ended up in Mazama. There are a lot of fairly liberal folks, a lot of professionals from the west side or from other parts of the country, and they would like to see universal health care for one, better education, less divisiveness. Unfortunately, sometimes that means for them that everybody else has to agree with them. And then you go down valley and you get more to the working population. I mean, Twisp is a real working western rural town. To a greater degree, for instance, than Winthrop, which is has a lot of tourism going on. And it becomes much more conservative. But I think ultimately a lot of the things they want are the same, because it's all about giving people the opportunity to have a good life. And at this point, that's really not all that easy to do in this country, unless you're like me and shot in the butt with luck, if you'll pardon the expression. Because I consider myself I've been given multiple second chances and opportunities that most people would never even think of. And it wasn't entirely my doing that I ended up as comfortably off as I am. It just sort of happened because I was in the right place at the right time, and I had the tools to deal with the situation.
What do the people of the Meadow Valley think about Olympia? Did they think Olympia listens to their needs? Did they think that they're marginalized by the way the votes come down in Olympia?
The more conservative people are pretty sure that they are outcasts of society because, of course, Olympia has traditionally been largely dominated by the West Side, the Seattle, Bellevue megalopolis, and therefore the issues are dealt with from frequently a more liberal perspective, and one that may or may not be appropriate for voters on the East Side.
And so the people of the Meadow Valley say, well, if they're not going to listen to me, at least I'm going to send a Republican.
To some degree, that's true. I mean, quite frankly, I don't know that I have a prayer against Mike Steele. There are a couple of problems. A, he's got an R by his name, and that is traditionally the way Eastern Washington goes. And B, he's a really nice guy. I have absolutely nothing against him.
He was here yesterday sitting in that chair.
Oh, yeah. Well, I look forward. I've only shaken hands with him. I'm going to be meeting with him next week just to sit down and bang ears a little bit and talk about stuff.
How do you think your stuff differs from his stuff?
I couldn't really say. I mean, there is.
Let's take an example. How about the Hearst decision? Was that fairly done?
The Hearst decision, I think, was kind of a kludge. I don't think it really solves anything. I mean, the solution to the Hearst decision I think we're going to have a problem down the road, similar to what we've had previously, simply because the water law in the West is a mess, and eventually it has to be dealt with in a manner that takes into consideration historical or current circumstances as opposed to historical precedent. I mean, with senior water rights going to people who were there first and may or may not be using that water, but nobody else can use it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a mess, but it's not something that should be partisan at all. It requires sitting down and figuring out how to make it work for everybody. And many of the bread and butter issues are that way. I mean, there's a lot of there are a lot of issues that get a lot of play at the national level that certainly they apply within Washington and within Eastern Washington, but they're not the ones that Olympia really has to do with. We have to deal with stuff that's closer to home, allocation of resources, allocation of labor, figuring out how the people of the state can have a decent life so they can actually spend a little time thinking about who they really want to be running the show. At this point, you know, when you're working 4 jobs trying to take care of your kids, keep your car running, who's in Olympia is really kind of immaterial because you're sort of screwed no matter what.
Now, because you're a rookie and this is the first time you've run for office, what did you do first? Website? Bumper stickers? What did you do?
Nothing so far.
Okay.
I put some money into an account, got a P.O. box. It's been a ridiculously busy time of year, partly because of we're coming into fire season, and I'm with Okanagan County Fire District 6, and that means, you know, it hasn't gotten bad yet, but at some point I may disappear altogether because I'll be on a fire somewhere up in, you know, Methow headwaters, God knows.
Tell me about your work with the fire department, the volunteer fire department.
I'm just a grunt. I've been on the force for 6 years. I'm what they used to call firefighter 1 by their standards, and that means basically you can go up to firefighter 2, but that tends to deal a lot more with things like hazmat that we don't really even deal with. There are professionals available who deal with that. So I'm fully trained in both structure and wildland fire. And normally, if there's a fire, for instance, the Twist River fire.
How do they call you?
They
just call you on your phone.
No, they call me on my little.
Oh, your pager, I see.
And they also send a text to my phone, and I go to the station and grab the appropriate rig and put on my appropriate costume, and I go out and I fight fire. And that's just the way it is. I'm kind of aging out of the real hard stuff.
Now you're the brains of the outfit, right?
Well, no, not so much. I roll a lot of hose, and I run pumps, and I drive vehicles and that kind of thing. And actually, the local fire districts in our area, at least, we're the first ones on scene, but usually the DNR or the Forest Service takes over within 2 or 3 hours because, you know, they've got all these 20-odd-year-old kids who have been training to do this for the past 2 or 3 years and can do it so much better than a bunch of 60-year-old geezers in red trucks.
But guys with experience.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've got a tremendous fire department up there, thanks to people showed really strong foresight. I mean, we've got something on there between, I think, 350 to 400 square miles of turf to cover. We've got 4 stations. We've got a bazillion very nice engines that they've managed to put together even while keeping the levy quite low. And our former chief, Don Waller, was a madman about training. So we sometimes go out on state mobilization or something like that, and people are extremely impressed. They say, how can we get our guys to be as good as your guys? And we say, well,
attention,
make them miserable.
Train them to a fare thee well, right?
Yeah.
Have you gone door to door knocking and saying, you know me, I'm Alan, I'm running for office?
I have not. I'll be honest, I have my own ideas about how this stuff will work. And there's an old saying that I learned in business school. The thing about advertising is you always know you're wasting half your money. You just don't know which half. And I'm not sure doorbelling and phone calls are a good use of time. And they do require an awful lot of volunteer time, or you have to pay somebody to do it. And one of my less favorite things about politics is the amount of money involved. Right. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And I think there are other ways that I can use to get my message out with considerably less brain damage. Though let's
keep that to a minimum if we can, right?
Yeah. So I am my biggest problem is I'm known. Well, my wife is very well known in the Methow and a very good recommendation. I don't know anybody in Chelan except Mike Steele, who's probably not going to be real helpful.
He may vote for someone else.
Yeah, he may. And I don't know anybody in Leavenworth, but I know people who know people, and I do have some access to some media tools that I think will do me some good, and they're even legal.
Alan Fahnestock is our guest. He's a candidate for the 12th District. When we come back, he's going to ask you for your vote.
You're listening to The Agenda on News Radio 560 KPQ and KPQ.com. 560 KPQ and KPQ.com.
News Radio 560 KPQ. It's 1:56. I'm Michael Knight. My very special guest is Alan Fahnestock. Alan is a candidate for the 12th District. And Alan, the stage is yours. Ask the voters for your support.
Well, this is one of the things that's gotten me in trouble with my wife and the other political powers that be up in the valley who know me, because the whole deal of asking for a vote strikes me. I'm a terrible salesman, always have been, and I also don't like salesmen very well, because if somebody has to work that hard to sell me something, it's probably not something that I really want or need. So my approach is more to say, I'll ask you to take a look at what I publish on my website, which I will distribute. It's still under construction. Listen to what I say here. Get to know me a little bit. If you like it, well, vote for me. If you don't, well, there's not much I can do about that. I think that I bring something to the race that a lot of other people may or may not, but it is just by virtue of the fact that A, I am a rookie, B, I do have a lot of knowledge about the political system and how it at least should operate, and I'm also very familiar with so many of the, shall we say, stages or states of life. I've been broke, I've been semi-rich, I've been in between, I've worked labor, I've worked management, I've worked fisheries, forestry, telecommunications, finance, a lot of stuff.
Wow.
Well, some people would say, no, you can't hold a job. But basically what it comes down to is I've been in positions where certain things were needed, and people would ask me to do something, and I was able to pick it up and make a go of it. I was probably never the best at any of them, but I was pretty good. And so take a look, see what you think.
His name is Alan Fahnestock, Fahnestock.